Managing a small team or business comes with a unique set of challenges. With limited resources and manpower, it's easy for things to feel chaotic and out of your control. How can you, as a leader, accomplish your goals while keeping your team engaged, effective, and accountable? This podcast will give you practical strategies you can implement now to lead your team or business to reach its fullest potential. Welcome to the Organizing Chaos podcast with your host, Danny Coleman.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of Organizing Chaos, where we find small practical strategies for small teams and small businesses. So this episode is a follow-up to last week's episode, which was about quarterly plans. And so this episode, I want to talk about how to do quarterly plans. How do you have the meeting? What does it look and feel like? How do you pick your goals? Et cetera, et cetera. So if you've not listened to last week's episode, which was about why they're important and how they can really have an impact on your business, check that out. This one is going to be more practical about how to actually do that. So this is another, hopefully the last audio-only version of the podcast. I know that you guys are all missing my face and my marker board, but I'm getting a new camera in, trying to get like the best one possible, and it's going to be really great because I teased this last time. I'm going to tease it again. If you've not heard, we're going to be doing a world tour, not really a world tour, but I'm going to take the Organizing Chaos podcast on the road, and we're going to be visiting local business owners, and not just local, actually, anyone. In fact, if you're not on my list, hit me up and you're interested in sharing something about your perspective, and either whether you're a manager or a small business owner, or even if you are doing just the day-to-day work, and you have something that you want to share, something that you think is important that could help a small business succeed. Whether it's a lesson learned or whatever, I would love to hear it, and I would love to have you on the show. You can email me, danny@dannycoleman.me, and we'll get you scheduled. Like I said, we can either do that in person if you're here in the Middle Tennessee area, or we can do one virtually online as well. So let me know. I'd be happy to hear from you. So quarterly plans and how to do them. The first thing that you want to do, and just kind of recap, on last week's episode, these are the big rocks, right? These are the things this is the long-term work that you're going to make time for in your business so that you make progress towards your long-term goals and towards building and innovating in your business so that you don't become stagnant and fall behind and become basic, essentially. You're about building, if you're listening to this podcast, it's because you want to build a great business that people will love to work for, that people love showing up for and are passionate about working for. And so in order to do that, you got to make long-term goals and you got to make progress toward those long-term goals. Quarterly plans are how to do them. So all that said, the first thing that you want to do is figure out, first of all, who all needs to be involved in these decisions. Sometimes I like to, so let me back up a little bit. If you've got the visionary integrator set up, then I would start there. If you are a business owner, you're visionary, and you've got an integrator, which is your general manager, if you've got that set up, that's fantastic. That's how the top of every org chart in that's what I believe is the truth. The top of every org chart needs to look that way. So long as you are more than 3 people, your business is bigger than 3 people. That's a different topic. If you've got a visionary and an integrator, those are the 2 people who need to be kind of thinking about these goals first, right? And I would say you can pick maybe 10. Just kind of throw 10 up on the board, see which ones stick. And honestly, if the visionary is really sitting in the visionary role, they usually have a million ideas or things that they want to do. The integrator is going to help kind of cull those down to the ones that will really help them move the needle, and also that the team in its current capacity has the ability to carry out. So if that's your setup, that's where I would start. And even if that's not your setup, I'd recommend finding your general manager or whoever you would consider your right-hand person, even if you've not formally named them the general manager or your integrator. Have this meeting with them first, visionary, business owner. That's how it needs to be. Then, if you are really interested in kind of getting good buy-in, I would then next have this conversation with your leadership team. If you have more than one manager, your managers and the way that your org chart should look should be kind of under the general manager, right? So you got visionary on top, integrator, then your managers, right? And your managers kind of are your leadership team. These are the people who are leading all of the technicians and the lower level employees to carry out the work that needs to be done. So first meeting should be visionary and integrator. Second meeting should be visionary, integrator, and leadership team. And then lastly, I would then kind of roll this out to your whole team and ask if anybody has any opinions about it, if they see any issues or holes in the plan, they have any feedback, how do they feel about it? Is it exciting to them to know that you guys are going to start doing these things? What is going to be the reward when these goals are hit? That's kind of how you want to roll this out to your team. Make sure you're not just like, hey, here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to accomplish it. You guys go forth and do it. If you want to get buy-in from the top to the bottom, and so usually that takes, in my experience, at least 3 meetings, sometimes 4, because management usually has 1 or 2 meetings extra about these initial goals. And then the last meeting is just about rolling it out to the team, but asking for feedback before you kind of put the seal on it and say, this is what we're doing for the next 90 days. So how many objectives should you pick? That's a great question. I'm glad you asked. I would pick between 5 and 8 objectives to kind of start off with, and then ultimately just choose 3 or 5. So that's my first point is just, I talked about the meetings and whatnot, but really the first point is just however you go about it. What I just discussed, that the 3 to 4 meetings or so, that's ideal, right? But don't let ideal keep you from making progress. So if you can't do all that, just pick 5 to 8 objectives that will move you closer to your goals. Point number 2 is choose 3 or 5 of those goals, right? So a coach of one of my business partners once said, and this has always stuck with me, it's like once you feel, when you're packing your quarterly plan full, whenever you start to feel like you can fit a little bit more in there, that's when you should stop before you do that. So don't put a little bit more in there because you need slack. The truth is the day-to-day operations of your business are going to take the majority of your time. That's just how it is as a small business. You have limited resources. The work on long-term stuff oftentimes doesn't get done at all, but we're not that kind of a business. We're the kind of business that is going to be making long-term goals and long-term plans, making progress on them. So usually I kind of say, if you want to ballpark it, you got like an 80-20 split. Your 80% of your whole team's energy and resources go towards delivering on the day-to-day. You got about 20% that you're able to put towards the long-term stuff. So that's why you want to have slack built into your plan to accommodate for the things that are going to come up. Someone's going to get sick for a while. There's going to be something that gets discovered when you're making progress towards these objectives that holds things up. There's going to be a busy part of your season, perhaps, things like that. So when I say pick 5 to 8, then pick from there 3 to 5 objectives. And whatever your number is that you end up landing on, make sure you feel like there's some slack there. It's so important to do that because what's better than making goals and just not hitting them is making goals and hitting them. So don't feel like your goals or you have to be like, we have to be so ambitious in order for us to make progress. Like, no, like just pick, if you're doing no quarterly plans right now and you start doing quarterly plans, that's progress. You can pick one thing and accomplish that in 90 days. That's better than 0. So don't feel like you need to set the bar so high just to try to get people to stretch and attain it, because ultimately what that does is has the opposite effect. It makes people, one of 2 things or a combination of 2 things happens. One is that people are just like, meh, that number doesn't mean anything, or that goal doesn't really mean anything. We didn't hit it last time, we're not going to hit it this time. And they just kind of ignore this kind of goal setting activities that you might do. And then the second thing is it'll be discouraging. So not only will people start to ignore it, but usually what happens first is they just get discouraged because they're just like, man, I never hit this goal. So don't set stretch goals as being your target. There's another way to do goals, which I'll kind of put as an aside in this episode. And I got this from a friend of mine, but it's MTO, minimum target outrageous. You can do this with quarterly plans if you'd like to as well. You can say, okay, at a minimum, we need to accomplish these 3 things. Our target, what we're shooting for, is accomplishing, however, those 3 things plus 2, so 5 things. And our outrageous or our stretch goal can be 8 things, right? The 8 things. So you can do that if you want to, but just remember and make sure that your team realizes that the target is the one in the middle, right? And what you want is you want that middle one to be the one where it's realistic and there's slack built in. So if you really want to set some stretch goals because you want some stuff to live on there that you want people to, maybe making progress towards or whatever, that's fine. But remember, that's bonus. That's gravy. That's icing on the cake. But I really strongly encourage you to not even do that. The MTO, minimum target outrageous goal setting, has its place in a lot of parts of your business, and I'll probably do an episode about that sometime. But I think in quarterly plans, it's better to just stick with what are 3 to 5 things that we can get done over the next 90 days it's going to move the needle for our business, and it's going to make some substantial improvements for us. So the last thing is once you've chosen those 3 to 5 things, you need to assign responsibilities, milestones, and deadlines. Okay, so responsibility, that should be obvious. Who is taking point on this project or this initiative or this objective, right? Now, the person taking point does not necessarily mean that's the person who does all of the legwork, right? So let's just say, for example, your sales manager, right? Or you got a sales manager. This is the person who's responsible for everyone hitting their sales goals. They may actually do legwork too. They may actually go out on sales appointments and whatnot, but they're the person who's managing your team of, let's just say, 3. And so these 3 other salespeople, they may do a lot of legwork for your sales manager in them accomplishing their goal. But the point man or woman, the point person, is the person who's ultimately responsible for this happening. So when you're picking his responsibilities, don't make someone feel like, hey, this is entirely on you. You have to do all of this. You got to do all the work to accomplish this goal. Don't do that. Just make them responsible for the goal being hit, and tell them and make sure that you as a manager are giving them the resources that they need to hit those goals. So that means time, maybe. It may be that you need to make a certain technician or lower level employee available to help this manager accomplish the goal. Something, whatever it is. You may need to jump in and help them as well, but whatever it is, assign them, pin them with a responsibility, but also give them access to resources and using other people as leverage to help them accomplish the goal. So that, like I said, just to kind of recap that gives someone the sole responsibility of driving the project or the initiative or objective forwards, but again, doesn't make them feel like they have to do all of the work. And this also, this should be a manager, by the way, who's in charge of this, if at all possible, have it be a manager, because this is also great development practice for managers, because they need to be delegating some of this work, right? So let's just say they're trying to hit, goal number 1, and they need to do A, B, and C to get that all done. Well, they may only have the capacity to accomplish A. So a good practice for them then is to be like, well, I got to figure out how to get somebody else to take care of B and C. And that's management. So anyways, hopefully that makes sense, but assign responsibility, not necessarily total responsibility. Pin someone with the responsibility to carry out the objective and to be the person who drives it forwards, makes it happen. Secondly, have milestones, right? So over your next 90 days, have milestones. So like at day 30, you need to be this far. At day 60, you need to be this far. Day 90, that's the end goal. Break it up in whatever way that makes sense. But milestones are a great way to make sure that people are on track to finish. You don't want it to be 2 weeks before the 90 days ends up and they're like scrambling to get things done. You need to be checking in with these milestones. And by the way, you're checking in about these big rocks weekly, or however often you have either your one-on-ones with these managers, your leadership team, or if you have like a weekly leadership team or bi-weekly leadership team meeting, you're checking in about these things. So it's not just like, all right, 90 days, we'll talk to y'all in 90 days about these big rocks. No, it needs to be a weekly thing. Like, hey, how's that progress on objective A, Sam? How's that project? How's that objective B going? Diane, whatever. That's what you need to make sure you're checking in regularly about this. And again, I don't know what your meeting schedule looks like. I've done a series on meetings before, and I definitely recommend that you're meeting with people regularly, no less than once per month. But honestly, I think every other week is really a sweet spot for most small businesses. So make sure you're checking in on those milestones. You have dates set up where it's like, you think you can be here. Remember not to dictate them to the people. Ask them, whoever's responsible for the objective, hey, When do you think you can be 25% of the way done with this? When do you think you can be 50% of the way done with this? When do you think you can be 75% of the way? Let them give you their deadlines. That way they have buy-in and commitment to delivering on those. And then last is have those deadlines and stick to them. When someone tells you that they can be at 25% of the way done, on day 30, and day 30 comes along and they've made almost no progress or whatever, they're not where they said they would be, you need to have a conversation about why. Make sure to be understanding, right? But your job as a manager, to put it easily and simply and bluntly or whatever, being a manager is really just about getting people the resources that they need, moving things around to help them accomplish their goals. So if they're not where they need to be at their deadline, you need to say, okay, so what do you need from me to get to where you need to be, right? Maybe give them another 2 weeks or something like that where you check in again and they need to be at that point. But don't let it go on for too long. Don't let them say, I'm going to be at this point, and then you get to that point and they're not there. And you just be like, it's okay. They'll hit the 90 days. They'll hit the 90 days. Don't do that. Don't make it a habit of that. Do that once, but don't let it happen more than that. Or you're just going to find that people don't really care about the deadlines that you set. And when you breed a contempt or whatever, not caring about deadlines, you're breeding a group of people who are not going to get anything done for you. So that's it. And like I said, just make sure you're checking in weekly on these things. So those are the 3 things. To recap again, start out with picking 5 to 8 objectives that will move you closer to your goals. It's going to really move the needle for your business. Ultimately, choose 3 to 5 of those objectives. Make sure you've got Slack built in to your plan. And then lastly, make sure that you assign responsibilities, milestones, and hard deadlines, and you're checking in on all of the progress on these things weekly. So I don't usually pitch, I think I did this last episode, I don't usually pitch my services. However, if doing quarterly plans is something that you would like some help with, I really enjoy doing quarterly plans. So for small teams and small businesses. So if you have any desire to work with me on that, or if you need some help, kind of get going on this, if your quarterly plans are new for you, or you don't particularly find yourself as being someone who's good at project management, I would love to do that. You can hit me up at danny@dannycoleman.me. Check me out on my social media profiles. I am Danny Coleman, both on Twitter and Instagram. Like, share, comment, subscribe, all that fancy jazz. Leave me a review if you would on iTunes or Stitcher. Check me out on Spotify. That's my favorite podcast player or my favorite music player. You can easily find me on there as well. And hope you guys are all doing well. And hopefully I will have my camera set up for the next episode. And I'm also hoping that we, at that point, will also be on the road, taking the OC podcast on the road, doing the interviews. So you guys have an excellent rest of your day, and I'll catch you later.
Want more? Go to DannyColeman.me to download Danny's free small business hiring guide, which includes tips, templates, and tools, plus a step-by-step process you can use to find and keep high-quality employees for your small team or business.